Amazingly, a free sunny day that wasn't planned for, but it's fantastic news for me. So I'll be able to get a few more things done here that are key. The main thing is my pipe fittings came in to install the tanks. So now I can get the tanks in, which means I can get at least a temporary sole down, which means I can start to work on my lockers here, and I'm really pleased about that. Door went great, a little more oil on it today. You can see it's drying up in the sun, and mainly to get the tanks in is going to be fantastic. I just wanted to point out, I always use yellow gas quality tape when I use plumbing fittings. It's thicker and much better quality. Sometimes you have a really tight fitting, you can't because it's too thick, you'll have to use the cheap weight stuff, but I would definitely recommend use the yellow as much as possible. It's pennies difference. Okay, so here we have the fittings for the drain. This tank is the holding tank. It's an X water tank. It's not an ideal holding tank, I know, especially with some baffles in the bottom, but it's going to have to do for now. I cannot afford new tanks, but it's geared up. I'm basically designed in such a way that I could put a larger holding tank in here in time. So these fittings fit in that little notch, and then the hose runs across to the starboard side over here where the macerator pump will be, and that is the through hull for the macerator, and I'll put a new deck fitting in for the deck discharge. Hey Pop, how you doing over there? What a day, eh? Beautiful day. Okay, so I'm ready to swing this tank down into place, have the pipe on it. Unfortunately, this fitting, which I have to plug, is a 3/8, not a half like all the others, so which I don't have with me now, but I'll be able to reach out and around the corner and put that plug in later. This tank, you might notice, used to be a water tank, and I'm putting it upside down. As a result, the main vent is on the top. Fortunately, there's several drains that were on the bottom, which will effectively be vents for me, and the old fill, which is at the other side, will be available as a pump out. Anyway, you'll see it as all it comes together. Again, not ideal, but it'll work just fine for what I need to do, I believe. Okay, so now I just tip this down, snake it around, and I'm going to have to put you down for that, but you can see what's going to happen. The pipe comes down and around underneath that side. Piece of cake, and it's pulled through. And the hose comes up through this bay in the framing, in between the floors, and it'll end up coming to the macerator pump in here. All of that I will explain to you. Something else I should say, use the best hose you can afford. I mean, this stuff is expensive, but compared to that generic white junk, this is really nice to work with. Okay, let's put some more fittings on. Yep, so I've prioritized putting the sole down. So I've got my framing members in, and this is the piece of ply that technically is the final permanent piece. The sole was going to get teak decking, and I'm still going to do it. I'm just not going to be able to do it this fall. I'm running out of time. So this was going to be the underlay for that. It's already got 3 coats of clear penetrating epoxy sealer on it. I don't know if it'll survive the winter as a horizontal surface. And I don't really know if I can assess it well enough in the spring. I may need to just abandon it, but again, nothing much I can do about it right now. I've got to put it down. It means I'm not going to be able to have waterproof scuppers, so fresh water is going to get into my bilge over the winter. I'm going to fill the bilges with rock salt. At least that's what I think I'm going to do. Depends how many dry days I get, and there aren't many left. It's not ideal, but if I don't keep moving, I won't get nearly as much done as I really need to. So the first part of getting these benches in, and I'll explain that basically they're going to be benches that fill in the whole remaining side of the cockpit. So there'll be a vertical surface here and a horizontal surface there that is the bench, and it'll lift up, allowing access to storage all the way down to the bottom of the bilge. Now it's just a matter of building that. I have basically most of it figured out. It begins with putting a new surface on the inside of the transom, because it's going to carry on into those lockers and provide the surface, because there's no structure at the point where the end of this is going to be. So I begin with putting mahogany strips across here. They may have to sit on spacers. I'm not quite sure yet. I have to figure that out. First thing I have to do is decide whether I'm retaining this teak corner piece or not. I think I probably am. I gotta look at it a little further to see what kind of shape it's in. This side it's got fiberglass over it, and but it can be peeled off and sanded off. You can see the cloth there, and I don't know what kind of shape the stock is in for the hinges. So I think I'll get the heat gun out and peel this fiberglass off and see how we can proceed with that. Okay, so I think this is good enough to keep. The bungs are just body fillers, so I'll have to clean those out and put real bungs in at some point. But it's structural, it's solid, it's integrated with the opening, so I'm going to retain it and bring my new mahogany in right in here. Of course, I need to steam a new piece to go in here as well, but that's another chapter. Okay, a little more sanding. Is putting the paneling planks up the back of the transom onto the white oak strips I put on yesterday. I want to show you how I chamfered these. Basically, I want there to be some ventilation in here, so there's a gap between each board. But what I did is, if you can look at the way I've chamfered the top edge of it fully at a 45 and the bottom edge of it at 2 45s. So when the boards go together with a little gap, it becomes a rain drip. The outside is on my side, and as water comes down here and falls off that point, it should cascade down the front face of that and carry on outwards. Now, this is just an experiment. I'm not sure how well it'll work. I'm leaving a reasonable size gap because I want to get lots of ventilation. Obviously, if there's a hard blow, it will drive water up inside. You know, it's impossible, I think, to keep the bilge under a cockpit completely free of fresh water, although I'm sure most people have tried. I'm going to compromise by filling the bilge with salt as well, although I'll have to do some more research on that to find out if that's as good an idea as it sounds. Okay, so what I'm doing here, just using a little spacer underneath to decide how close to put these. It's a little bit complicated because I am on a curve at the same time, so it's a bit of a fiddle to get this just right. I'm tacking them with my air nailer because I'm very, very fond of this thing. Stainless steel 23 gauge pins, and that will hold almost without screws, but I'll put screws. The nice thing about these tiny little pins is that they basically disappear. The heads get pushed just under the surface. They're so small that the fibers of the wood collapse again around the head and you don't even know they're there. And because they're stainless, you're good for life. It's just starting to rain. I thought I might be able to do this before the rain. Looks like I'm slowed down for now because the rain is on. Dang. That's it. Well, I can't say it's pretty, but as a proof of concept and geometry check, my lazarette, locker, bench, thwart, whatever, lifting seat idea seems to work just fine. What I really wanted to do was be able to have a lifting seat on here that opened up as large an area as possible, and also have, what's going to happen, this is going to be solid planking for the thwart, and then there's going to be a plank at the back so that I don't have a chance of water running off the back. That'll be a sealed plank, and then there'll be a hinge line, a piano hinge here. But the trick was I wanted to make sure it was laid up in a way that it would clear the bulwarks as it lifted. In a way, actually, I can drop the hinge a little bit because I still have quite a bit of clearance in here. And of course, the lower that is, the closer this is to the bulwark, the larger the opening is when I open it. Only the middle 4 feet, not middle 4 feet, but a 4-foot section of the thwart will open. There'll be about 4 or 5 inches along that edge that remains down. Likewise in the back, because of the curve here, it would be very difficult to have it lift up. So it means stuff right against the transom. I'll have to reach around the corner. Not bad. Not bad at all. Okay, so now it's time to build it in mahogany. All right. Okay, here we are building the real thing. I built these uprights that are basically going to be screwed to the main structure below and are removable, because this whole panel is going to have to be removed if ever the sole has to come out again. So it's complex, making sure I'm building something that is both removable but also sheds water properly. So it's a bit complex here how it's all going to shed water and try to reduce the amount of fresh water in the bilge, but we're doing what we can. This is going to have 4 supports on each side. The ones at the bulkhead and the transom are going to stay vertical, even though they're not, excuse me, they actually go here. This little notch is to accommodate the little edge piece that's going to be permanently attached to the sole as a waterproofing member. So it's sort of tempting to slope this against the bulkhead so I can secure to it, but I didn't want to take into account having to shave the top and change the length. So I'm actually going to make it vertical and then just drop in a little wedge piece after that I can attach it properly. And that'll make that a lot easier. The bulkhead's not so bad. The transom, it's not only sloped, but it's curved, so it just wasn't really feasible. Okay, so I've marked these off. Let's throw a few screws in and get them in place. Strips along this back edge here. Again, I'm using this about 1/8 strong 1/8 spacer as a gap or spacer on the diagonal for this clever ventilated boarding that I've done here. I think it's clever. Who knows if it's clever or not? I think it's clever. It's a little precarious making sure you've got it in the right place before you pin it, though. Gonna look nice. And the last one will have to be scribed. There's no way it's going to fit into there like that. So, okay, see how this looks. Down there. I would say that's perfect. Well, it's good enough for me anyway. So, put this up here. I really like this ventilation system. Let's just hope I like it as much in a couple of years. Loving it. I'll probably have to put a tiny little wedge piece in there, but I'll deal with that later when I do whatever I'm doing here, which I still don't know what it is. Okay. That material in was so that I could scribe this piece, or finish scribing it anyway. Let's see how that fits. Oh, I would say that fits very well. Very well indeed. Alright, so let's drill some counterbores and get this installed. What a gorgeous day. December. Anyway, we have a week of good weather, so this is the big push. This has got to be done in the next few days. So, let's get some of this on. left myself some room so that I can be sure I get this right. Okay, so I've got it all sanded and down to 220, which will take the oil quite nicely. Great. Another hour or so and I'll be able to actually rub that right hard and it'll go completely dry. The oil will catalyze or whatever it is it does.